Wankhede ji is head of Department of Center for Political Studies in JNU. He is a scholar columnist on the issue of Indian cinema, Indian politics, mainly focused on caste and marginalized communities. There is no newspaper in the national this thing जहाँ पे उनका कॉलम नहीं आया हो. Not only national newspaper but international newspaper also. All इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया, प्रिंट मीडिया एंड सोशल मीडिया पे बहुत ज़्यादा एक्टिव रहते हैं. और एक्टिव तो बहुत सारे लोग हैं, बट इनका खासियत ये है कि मेनली फोकस्ड ऑन मार्जिनलाइज कम्युनिटी, जिनके लिए बहुत कम लोगों का ध्यान जाता है. ऐसे हमारे हरीश वानखेड़े जी दिल्ली से खास करके इस शो के लिए आए हैं. और हमारे गिरीश जी, इनके बारे में तो मैं हमेशा बोलता रहता हूँ, ही इज़ द इंसाइक्लोपीडिया ऑफ एंटरटेनमेंट इंडस्ट्री. एंटरटेनमेंट इंडस्ट्री की ऐसी एक भी चीज़ नहीं है जो गिरीश जी जानते नहीं हैं. वो चाहे सिनेमा हो, वो चाहे बॉलीवुड सिनेमा हो, हॉलीवुड सिनेमा हो, रीजनल फिल्म हो, हिंदी फिल्म हो, टॉलीवुड हो या OTT प्लेटफॉर्म हो, ऐसा एक भी टीवी चैनल आज इंडिया में मौजूद नहीं जहाँ पे उनका कंसर्न नहीं लिया जाता, जहाँ पे उनका इंटरव्यूज़ नहीं लिया जाता. और आज ये ऐतिहासिक टॉपिक, द डिस्कशन ऑन द पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ कास्ट इन इंडियन सिनेमा, जहाँ पे बहुत कम लोग बात करते हैं, ऐसा एक सेंसेशनल टॉपिक और बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक आज लेके ये वानखेड़े ब्रदर्स यहाँ पे आए हैं. मैं रिक्वेस्ट करता हूँ कि कृपया आप ये ऐतिहासिक शो की शुरुआत करें.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. Dr. Kadam has been very supportive, very generous, and I am very glad to see such an august presence of all the dignitaries, all my friends, my colleagues. Harish is my younger brother. I dye my hair, he doesn't. So that's why he looks elder. But Harish and me have 8 years difference. I did my engineering, I came to Mumbai. After that, he started his journey with JNU. He did his graduation, post-graduation, and after his PhD, he has been working in JNU for so many years. We have a strong understanding and bonding also for cinema. That came very natural to us. So the topic of today, when we say about the politics of caste in Indian cinema, I had been doing reviews in Hindi, English and Marathi for various publications, for newspapers, as well as for the magazines. Harish has been very vocal, very instrumental, very aggressive in writing in all the prime major dailies in the country. He has been vocal in various panel discussions. He travels across the globe. He talks about Ambedkarite movement. He talks about caste politics. He talks about religion. He talks about Indian cinema. And on my space, I am very much instrumental in distribution of films. I had been running an app called Jai Bhim, short video app. And we are there always talking about films. It comes like a family affair to both of us. We love films. So when we talk about politics of caste in cinema, without much of discussion, I will directly come to the point. When we talk about this, yesterday I was watching a film called Mananan. It is directed by Mari Selvaraj. Mari Selvaraj is a very popular Tamil film director, and this is his third film. He has done before this, he has done a film called Asuran, and before that he has done a film called Perumal something. That was his first film, and it was also produced by Paranjit. So when I saw this film, in that film, the main protagonist is the son of MLA, and the MLA has been selected from reserved constituency. And the crux of the film is there is a political party for which this MLA and his son works, and on every instance, whenever that MLA goes to that political leader, that party leader, he has to stand. He stands and he has been addressed like that. He is never allowed to sit. So the son, he sees that. he watches it. And he is a young boy who is running a small educational institution. But that disturbs him because his father is MLA. Still, he is standing and being addressed by the leader of the opposition or a political party. So the entire film is based on the disturbance and the uneasiness which caused to that young boy because he can't see his father standing there. So that was the theme of the film. It's amazing film, Mari Selvaraj film, and it is just released on Netflix 3 days back. So when we see the portrayal of caste, so we have graduated. So if we talk about from Himanshu Rai's films, Ajut Kanya, Devi Karani, so there is a big space. It's almost 110 years now. So this entire space has seen the evolution of the characters and even the caste politics. So I think with Mari Selvaraj, we need to start our discussion. So please let me know what do you think about Mari.
Right. Thank you very much. Like for that matter, the discussion like this are so crucial and important in today's time. Why? First of all, there is a global requirement of making Indian cinema a little intellectual, to bring cinema closer to what they call social realities and the social concerns and issues. And third is, of course, the kind of Indian cinema we have seen. I think there is a requirement of what they call a critical appraisal to that kind of cinema today. And therefore, this initiative is extremely important. Such initiatives across, not just here in Bombay, across these kind of initiatives are important. Moreover, there is an emerging cinema, and Mari Selvaraj's name is extremely important in this particular consideration. Why? Because apart from Mari Selvaraj, Paranjit, and in Maharashtra, Nagaraj Manjule, these are the some names that are now creating some ripples here and there, making the issue of caste or for that matter marginalized community like Dalits and Adivasi a crucial part of the mainstream cinema now. And this is a kind of a great opening. Why? Because for a very, very long time, since, like as I said, that century-old Indian cinema, and when we think about the issues of the marginalized communities in that kind of a long century, we'll find a kind of a nominal presence here and there, like film like Achut Kanna at the very early. But when we see the large map of such a grand cinema, what we call the presence of social identities, like for that matter, any cinema can be a caste cinema. Why? Because the protagonist, the hero, belongs to a peculiar identity, a surname or a category. But if you apply that surname to a low caste person or a Dalit identity, you'll find that the whole story of that film will change. And therefore, for a very, very long time, the protagonists are not coming from the social marginalized communities. And therefore, the problem of Indian cinema. Why this is a problem? Because if you see the global cinema, and Girish will be the right person to speak on that. If you see the global cinema, the kind of diversity we have experienced, mainly in Hollywood cinema, French cinema, Iranian cinema for that matter, the kind of diversity that we have experienced earlier, and even in today's time, that kind of diversity is means kind of perpetually absent from the day one. And therefore, to democratize that cinema, to bring the issue of diversity, to bring the issue of participation, I think this is the right time. Why? Because people like Mari Selvaraj is around there. He becomes a spokesperson of this kind of cinema, and therefore a kind of a bright change is very much possible. And therefore Mari Selvaraj's name is extremely important and a kind of a landmark person in the larger mapping of Indian cinema.
Wonderful. So I will take you guys down how it works when we are talking about Mari Selvaraj. If we're talking about only Tamil right now, so it's better because they had revolutionized cinema in a very different manner. They had been more aggressive. They had been very particular about their sensitivity. And the poster boy of Tamil cinema is Paranjit. And he clearly says that my films are political statements. I am here to make political statements. That is courageous enough for any filmmaker to say about. So when a filmmaker like Paranjit makes a mainstream films like Kabali or Kala with Paranjit, and then he makes Sarapatta Parambarai with a superstar there, then he is there to score. He is there to tell everybody that we happen, we matter. Same, the protege of Mari Selvaraj, same the protege of Paranjit is Vetri Maran. Vetri Maran's Visarnai was India's entry into Oscars. His last film, Vittu Malai, that is part one now. There he is talking about a story of a scheduled caste constable who is there on a run, who is there to catch a culprit in the jungles. That is such a wonderfully done film, and it is only part one. It is critically acclaimed and box office successful film. So we are talking about Vetri Maran. Then we are talking about Mari Selvaraj. So these all three are the poster boys of Tamil cinema. And why these only three? When we talk about how they evolved. So as you said, Harish is all evolved because a cinema goer is the citizen of a global village. When we make a film called Chori Chori somewhere in 60s or 50s, that was the influence of It Happened One Night. Okay? So we are always apprehensive and receptive from the Western culture, from the Western cinema. So when we guys in India were making Achut Kanya and Sujata and Bandini in US, in US there were the blacks which were treated like, in all their films they were treated with the characters of waiters or drivers or criminals or a drug addict. Same happened with us. If you can tell us about the films which was the parallel films, you can tell us how our characters were treated in our Indian cinema, and then I will connect you to the international cinema, how they treated their characters.
Absolutely. I think this is very important to understand first. Like the idea of representation, that what kind of representation we have when it comes to the identity of Dalits or for that matter marginalized communities. This is crucial. Why? Because as we say, the way Girish analyzed earlier, that the black exploitation, the idea of black exploitation was there in the Hollywood cinema. There was a representation, but that representation, what they call a stereotypical representation, that it is one peculiar kind. The possibility to look a black actor or a black character as a protagonist, as a hero, as a confident man who can change and challenge the world, that possibility was not there in the Hollywood cinema at the beginning. Similarly, when you compare that kind of cinema in Indian context, films like, for that matter, Achut Kanya, or later on Sujata, we find that the Dalit characters are mainly Dalit women characters. The male characters are absent. And those female characters are mainly passive characters. They are extremely humble and they do not have what they call a very powerful agency to reflect upon their identity. They are basically dependent alibi on the kind of cultural milieu which was there. And therefore, in that kind of a system where you are shown as powerless, humble, passive, or dependent, that kind of a categorization was there in the early cinema. And some of the cinema, even Ganga Jamuna, there is a character, Vajendra Mara's character is also shown on the similar line. So we can see that kind of a characterization in 50s and 60s, even what they called the golden age of Indian cinema, when socialists were making films, including Raj Kapoor and Bimal Roy, when they were making such a wonderful classical realistic films. Even in their films you will find that either there is an absence of a lower caste identity, and if there is a presence, that presence is mainly about its vulnerability, its powerlessness and agency-less person. That idea was there. 70s is crucial. Why? Because 70s is a time when something called a parallel cinema emerged. Again, very much what you call influenced by the socialist leftist ideas of the global order at that part of time. Benegal, Neelani, Ghosh, all these great directors created amazing art on screen, and that film, of course, show us that films like Ankur or Aghat or Par or a series of films where you'll find that the ruler feudal authorities, the way they exploit the marginalized communities, especially women, the question of rape, the question of women's identity in that particular society, the question of feudal control over human bodies, those questions were raised. And Neelani and Benegal both identified that question and created a grand cinema. But again, as I said, that there is a stereotype that 70s was also a time in Maharashtra at least where panthers were coming up with such a powerful voice. They were the new angry young man on street in Maharashtra. But you'll find that cinema is not recognizing that. What cinema recognized in 70s was this kind of an underlined endorsement that Dalits are poor, wretched, and they do not have the capacity to raise their voice. That problematic, that stereotype was there in most of the parallel cinema. It is closer to reality, we acknowledge that, we accept that, but there was more than that. As I said, Panthers for that matter, or the Dalit movement in Maharashtra was extremely powerful, but that powerful nature of the Dalit community was never appeared on the screen, and therefore that kind of a mistake was there. It was mainly stereotypical and a cinema about powerlessness of the Dalits.
Exactly, but that was, you are talking about 70s. So 70s, when we started the parallel movement with Shyam Benegal and Mani Kaul, where the victimization of Dalit or the woman protagonist was shown, at that time, Hollywood was asking for a bigger space. Hollywood was asking for a bigger chunk. So in Hollywood, there were some new voices. Sidney Poitier was one actor who were doing a lot of great roles, and he has already started acceptance. And then the poster boy of Hollywood came into existence, and he was Spike Lee. Spike Lee made his first film called Do the Right Thing, which was nominated in Oscar, and the whole world took a note of it. Then he made the second film called Malcolm X, and Malcolm X featured Denzel Washington. And then the whole world was there to talk about that, yes, black cinema is happening, black voices are happening. And now there were suddenly several protagonists from Spike Lee. There were a lot of directors. There was Jerry Jenkins, there was Steve McQueen, there were Shaka King, there were John Singleton. So these all black directors who talk about black voices started taking black as a main protagonist. They started treating black as a hero. The films which was called Driving Miss Daisy had a white female, whose black man, a driver, was Morgan Freeman. So that culture was suddenly changed in the late 70s and 80s. So as you said, that 70s was revolutionary in our country because we had a parallel cinema coming and talking about Akrosh and Aghat and Par and Manthan and Chakra. There in Hollywood also there was array of international black intelligent filmmakers who were talking about black voices, and suddenly these were the voices who started hogging the limelight. They were in Golden Globes, they were in Oscars, and not only in US, but even in Iranian cinema. Mr. Majidi happened, Mr. Faridi happened, and these were the people who were talking about poverty. Then we have Bon Joon-ho, who is the poster boy of South Korean films. He talks about class, he talks about rich and poor. So the narrative which we started here with caste, the same narrative across the globe was there somehow, but in another phases, in another lingo. South Koreans were talking about rich and poor class, whereas even Majidi's films were about class. So class conflict was very much evident in all the European films, but in Hollywood, black has started suddenly making foray as an anti-establishment hero. And most importantly, the way you have described about the parallel films, where the representative directors were from the different community. They were not from the marginalized community. They were representing the marginalized films. Similar to that, the people who are talking about black authority, it was started by the white directors. When a director like Oliver Stone, he made films like Born on 4th of July, Platoon, he was talking about the black authority. He was talking about anti-Vietnam War. Then there is Quentin Tarantino, who is regarded as one of the finest directors of all time. He was talking about a black hero who is just smashing the White House in a film called Django Unchained. So we have heroes, and that heroism of black was all started by these all people, and then there was European cinema. And when it was all happening, it was happening across the globe. That time, I think in India, we had Bandit Queen.
Right, absolutely. The Bandit Queen is a great example. Why? Possibly because this bandit genre, what they call emerged, of course, before that, like Ganga Jamuna for that matter, one of the finest bandit film. So the idea of bandit or a dacoit or an outlander or those who does not believe in a law and society, that revolutionary or kind of a militant character emerged in Hindi cinema, and there was a possibility that the protagonist can belong to a lower caste community. That possibility was there, and sociologically we know that bandits belong to a peculiar caste and community. But we'll find that even in the bandit cinema, the possibility that a hero or a protagonist from the lower caste communities can emerge as a brandishing weapons and taking revenge. That possibility was there, but it was not explored much. Only probably in J.P. Datta's film.
Yeah.
Most of the films
Gulami,
like
Yatim,
Gulami,
Border,
or Batwara.
Batwara.
These are the films where he tried to bring the caste question in a very sensitive manner.
Yes.
Even suggesting that somewhere the Dalits or the OBCs, what they call the Bahujan, has the capacity to fight back and create a kind of an antagonism through what they call armed struggle. That possibility in J.P. Datta's film was absolutely there. But Bandit Queen is, of course, was a great film of that part of time, but because Shekhar Kapoor borrowed from an actual real life story, suggested that the Dalit woman's character will not be passive or will not be just, as I said, wretched, but she can take revenge. That possibility is shown in Bandit Queen, and Shekhar Kapoor actually present that film in a very, very beautiful manner. Of course, there were multiple controversies around that particular film, but still, as a kind of a first introduction to a Dalit hero. Even in that film, apart from Bandit Queen, probably the male character played by Nirmal Pandey at that part of time, you'll find that he is a Dalit man in that film. And he played the Dalit character. And he is also an aggressive and a militant boy.
Yeah, he's the lover boy of Phulan Devi.
So you'll find that that film is introducing something called a militant capacity of the marginalized community.
Yes, very beautifully done.
Bandit Queen did that kind of a job. And probably the other films, other parallel films were not doing that job. As I said, the filmmakers coming from the other side. So that difference, which Girish also endorsed, that the filmmakers coming from the other communities represent that concern. But the way black cinema later on in Hollywood changed the whole narrative, the ethos or the essence of what they call black cinema, that was not there in Indian cinema for a very, very long time. That happened only when the directors or producers coming from the marginalized community took the camera and decided to tell their own stories. That happened little late. But Bandit Queen or the bandit cinema is one of the genre, like Soncharia, another very important film.
Soncharia was also, it was by Abhishek Dubey.
So there is a genre where you can relate with the kind of a black cinema
and
which
then
we
I
are
will
there.
take it forward. Now, when you are talking about Son Chidiya also, you are talking about Asuran now. So with Bandit Queen, we have a female protagonist who is taking a revenge. But with Mari Selvaraj's film Asuran, he is talking about the revenge also, and it is a caste revenge. When the same film called Asuran is being made in Telugu, it was called Narappa. Here, hero was Dhanush. There, the hero was Venkatesh. And there, instead of caste conflict, they showed class conflict. And that was lame film. That didn't work. So, it happens. So, May Tamil was more aggressive and more vocal and more frank about showing that kind of cinema, whereas Telugu films, they played by the gallery. So it happens, but that aggression, what you are saying about, where that aggression which was just starting with in 85 or 86 with Bandit Queen, that got nurtured into a lot of filmmakers, and eventually we started watching those films, and then somewhere down the line a Sairat happens, somewhere down the line Fandry happens. So there are just bolt in the blue, nothing specific about it. But the whole helm of affair is been handled by Tamilians. There they made a lobby. There they called their films as a political statement. There, with every camera movement, every interview, they have Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's picture at the back of their interview at the as a backdrop. Similar to that, they have made a library also now in their studio, Neelam Library. So that kind of aggression which I have seen in Tamil, Hindi is still missing that.
Right. You are absolutely right. Probably the what they call the post-globalization period, post-90s period. Bandit Queen came in 94. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, Jabbar Patel's film, supported by the government, came in the same year. So that was a period when we can see a arrival of what they call a Dalit protagonist on screen. Ambedkar's film and Bandit Queen were the two bigger examples of that part of time. In late 90s, you will find that multiple other films are now coming where the Dalit protagonist is a key character. Probably Arakshan can be seen as one of the first film where a mainstream hero doing a Dalit character.
Very good looking Dalit character
Dalit
was there.
character.
Saif Ali Khan.
Saif Ali Khan. And the film story also revolves around his own identity. Further, the character is again not poor boy, but he is a middle class, educated, foreign written boy who understands his caliber and capacities and ready to fight. That character, Arakshan introduced at the first time. And that was a kind of a new beginning at that part.
Yes.
Of course, the second half of the film was different, but the first half was a very important film. And later on, you will find that 2000 onwards, there are series of films.
Yes, yes. Even Serious Men.
Right, Serious Man or OTT, of course, changed that.
OTT changed it.
Even before OTT's arrival, you will find that apart from Arakshan, we have film like Manji.
Yeah.
We have film like Guddu Rangila, where the character belongs to a socially deprived identity, but he decides to take revenge against the feudal lord. And he fight that particular battle. So there are what they call a protagonist emerging. The major Hindi film which we can endorse and can celebrate is of course Masan.
Yes.
That is a great film. Why? Because it is not only about a Dalit protagonist, but also directed by a person belonging to that particular community.
Neeraj Ghaiwan.
And Neeraj Ghaiwan is a kind of a celebrated name today. And the kind of a storytelling, the realism, the method, or for that matter, the courage to tell that kind of a story was extremely powerful. And Masan changed that particular scenario. Probably Masan can be a landmark film in that case in Hindi cinema.
I agree.
And then later on, of course, there is a huge other side of that particular story.
Yeah, exactly. By the time that Masan was happening here, no, it must be 2000s. So by that time, there was as their mentor, and they were making films. And they were not only making films, they were the part of Golden Globe, they were the part of Grammys, they were the part of Oscars. So in the same context, they made so many films from Cry Freedom. Cry Freedom was one of the very prominent film. And then there were black actors who has suddenly emerged from the phase of sidekicks to the mainstream actors like Will Smith to from Sidney Poitier to Denzel Washington, then Will Smith, and then Samuel L. Jackson, and then Morgan Freeman. So these were all the actors who are the black actors, but started doing the main lead characters. So then we had Forrest Whitaker, we had Chadwick Boseman. He's the late Chadwick Boseman now. So when these all filmmakers, they started evolving, and then during the COVID, I remember there was 2021, and the Oscar nominations. I generally see what films are being positioned for the Oscars. So that year was very important for black cinema and for everybody, because we always feel that what black represent there, what black revolutionized there, has got lot of effect on us as well. So when there was a Black Panther movement in US, when we had a Dalit Panther movement here in India, there were a lot of influences of those activities. And there is a film called Judas and the Last Messiah. So it talks about the Black Panther as well as Dalit Panther, not Dalit Panther, as a Black Panther movement. So in 2001, it was very interesting year only because there were 4 films, and all 4 films were nominated for Oscars, and these all 4 films directors were black. That was one of the most important year for us. One was Shaka King, and she has directed Judas and the Last Messiah. Second was Chadwick Boseman's film called Miss Rainey's Black Bottom. Third was another film called One Night in Miami by Regina King. And the fourth film was again by The Five Blood by Spike Lee. So these 4 films in the same years were nominated in different categories in Oscars. Out of this film, I remember Judas and the Last Messiah. It was nominated in 6 categories. And out of the 6 categories, it has won 2 categories. In 2 categories. Best Supporting Actor. So, I mean to say that when the black movement is talking about a black movement is been represented by a film called Judas and the Black Messiah. Here, on the other hand, in Hindi, we have also evolved. We have got films where there are Dalit protagonists who can be in Article 15, who can be in Kagaz, Kagaz was played by Pankaj Tripathi. Then there could be Nawazuddin Siddiqui, who is playing not Mazi only, but serious men. So there could be Dalit protagonist also, but this way of acceptability into mainstream, while there has been revolutions where there has been voices, black voices were very prominent. 2 years back only, the entire Oscars was criticized only because there was no black representation. So when we are talking about black representation, they ask for it. Whereas in India, we don't ask for it. So that is a big
absolutely.
Change.
This contrast, this comparison with black cinema is crucial to understand. Why? Because probably we are a little late to arrive to that level. The way black cinema revolutionized Hollywood, the way they contributed to make Hollywood diverse, participatory, and bringing the social questions to the screen. That possibility in India is quite late. We are yet to suggest that our Indian cinema is basically endorsing that kind of value of diversity and participation. Our cinema is still related to what they call the cringe entertainment or the profit-making industry. The responsibility to create an intellectual cinema, to create a cinema which is socially responsible, to create what they call a quality entertainment. That possibility is still not there in Indian cinema. And therefore, very handful of films are there, and we probably endorse all those films. But there are a kind of a small segment of such a huge industry. We produce almost 1,000+ films in this country, and probably we have just handful of films which are socially responsible, which can talk about these particular issues and can create what they call a Dalit protagonist. And therefore, this comparison is a nice comparison, but the actuality of it is little difficult to accept in India. We are still a cinema which is exclusive, which exclusively tells certain kind of stories about certain communities and certain identities. But when it comes to reflect upon social identities, mainly the Dalits and Adivasis, you'll find that that cinema is not been produced much in that kind of a volume, the volume which we have in Hollywood or in European cinema. And that condition needs to change. This is a great time, in the kind of time in which we are seeing films or making films is a great time, and that possibility is there. And people like Girish is, of course, making that change and allowing people to walk on that path and make a better cinema. So, of course, it's a very, very important time. But this criticality to understand Indian cinema, that it is an exclusive cinema till date, it is still dominated by peculiar caste and communities and classes, and the possibility that the Dalit voices can be represented in this cinema is still bleak. And that can be a bigger submission from my side.
Yeah, but I will again make it difficult. Now see, when we are talking about acceptability, overall acceptability, when you talk about Hollywood, see the people who are working there as the stalwarts. See the people who are there extremely successful. Last year, there was an Oscar to Alfonso Cuarón. He is Mexican. Before that, there were 2 consecutive Oscars, The Revenant and Birdman. It was given to Alexandra Inarritu. That guy is Mexican. Woody Allen is American, but then we have got films from Guy Ritchie. We love those films, and that guy is from Britain. He is from England. Now, yeah, Parasite got the Best Picture award, and that guy, Bong Joon-ho, is South Korean. Before that, he has already made an English-American film. Then we have Ang Lee. Ang Lee made Life of Pi as well as The Brokeback Mountain. He got Oscars for it. He is again a Taiwanese filmmaker. So we have filmmakers from Taiwan. We have filmmakers from South Korea. We have filmmakers from Mexico. We have filmmakers from Great Britain. We have filmmakers across the globe who are there in Hollywood, giving it a socio-metropolitan culture. Whereas in Mumbai, we have filmmakers from Calcutta. We have filmmakers from Hyderabad. We have filmmakers from Haryana. We have filmmakers from Bangalore. And what sort of films they are making? They are making a formulaic film. They are making a stereotype film. They are not lending their voices. They are not aggressive enough. They are not revolutionary enough. They are not doing their bit. They are doing only the films which they want to tell us that this is what audience want. Audience doesn't want it. Audience wants something to disturb them. Audience want something which Gaspar Noé makes. Audience wants something which Quentin Tarantino makes. Audience wants something which Martin Scorsese makes. Audience want something which Raj Kapoor Saab made. Audience want something which Vimal Roy used to make. Audience want something which Sahi Paranjape made. We are offered what sort of cinema? We are offered passive, non-cultural, non-elitist cinema, and we call it a masala cinema. What is the meaning of masala cinema? We are not here to eat masala. We want to be entertained, but with a class. Why do we watch a film like the Black Caste Man, which is again directed by Spike Lee? Why do we watch film of Majid Majidi? Why do we watch? And with the OTT, we are exposed to different cultures. With the OTT, we have got a bigger exposure. With OTT, we have got international exposure. Now I can watch all Spike Lee films. I can watch all Majidi films. I can watch all Woody Allen films. I can watch all Scorsese films at my home. Why will I go and watch a film in theaters unless you do something? And what sort of films you are to make? You have to make film with social responsibility. We are not saying that make films which could be giving message or doing something. So we don't want a social change, but we want you to represent a certain kind of cinema which could be entertaining enough, but it has to have certain edge. It has to have certain strength to it, which Paranjit does. When he makes Kabali, it's a statement. When he makes Sarapatta Parambarai, it's a statement. So you need to make a cinema which is technically fine, which is culturally poignant, which is not shallow. Your film, the Hindi films or the Marathi we can't talk about. After Sharpit or Fandry or I think Sairat, there are no filmmakers there who can make good cinema, leave cinema with a social message. They can't make a better cinema which can stand alone as a good cinema. Sorry, Marathi film industry is already going in shambles. They make 120 films in a year and only 4 films work. So that is a shame for Marathi films. Hindis are alike. They are not doing great job. Tamil, they are scoring. Telugu, they are amazing. Malayalam, they are extraordinary. So we need to learn from them. If we are talking about the entire discussion, if I am talking thrice about Mari Selvaraj and Vetri Maran and Paranjit, it means they matter. What matters for us is not only political statement or the caste conscious film. What matters to us is a real entertaining film. Film is a film. So when you want to make a film, it has to be devoid of any inclinations. It has to be a pure entertaining film, but it has to have certain depth. It has to have certain strength to it. Now, when I see the OTT scene, it is amazing. It is great. It is superlative for all of us who believe in great storytelling. We have a web series called Dahad, where the lead protagonist is a Dalit girl. And she is known for her surname. So when she solves the case, she changes her father wanted to change her surname to the open caste. After solving a case, she changes her surname to her original caste because she believes in that surname. And that surname belongs to lower caste, but she believes in that because she is confident enough to accept that identity. So that acceptance of diversity is not in our cinema. There are some exceptions. Dahadin is an exception. And then there is Kathal, which is an exception where the police officer is a Dalit protagonist, a girl, or the class. Class is amazing. Class is actually the official remake of a Swedish elite web series. That Class has got a great Dalit protagonist who works in a hotel, who pays for his younger brother's fees, but he is a political activist. And that political identity in mainstream web series is amazing thing. So I think that we should welcome the new changes. And that change is not happening in cinema, at least in Hindi and Marathi. That change is happening in Malayalam cinema. That change is happening predominantly in Tamil cinema. We are still ahead. Hindi is ahead, Marathi is ahead. But web series, yes. There are amazing work which is happening on web series. And the female protagonists who are Dalits, not only those, but the male protagonists who are Dalits, they are there. They are staying there. They are talking about. I remember a scene from a web series called Nirmal Pathak Ki Ghar Vapsi. Now Nirmal Pathak is a boy who has come to his village and he is working in his village now and he wants to go back to his city. So there are young boys who are fighting and he reaches to them and one boy is carrying a stone and he is thinking to throw it to somebody else. He says, throw that stone from your hand. Don't get that stone. what you have to get in your hand is this. He says like this, and the camera pans, and then we see the statue of Dr. Ambedkar. He has books in his hand. So he says, take book in hand instead of this stone. So that is what right now web series is all about. This is the scene from a web series called Nirmal Pathak Ki Ghar Wapsi. So I am telling you that right now, the new writers, the new directors, they are intelligent enough to talk about social justice, to talk about diversity. There is this web series in which there is a segment of Neeraj Gaiwan called Gili Puchi, in which Konkana Singh Sharma plays a Dalit girl who has another sexual orientation, but she is cunning. She is cunning, politically correct, and has her own personal sexual orientation. So we have the characters now which are coming out of the closet, which are more prudent, which are more volatile, which are dynamic, and that is what our cinema and the web series and the entertainment wants.
Absolutely. I think it's a kind of a bigger conclusion of what we expect from cinema. The expectations are, of course, that the cinema should be diversified, should be representative, and should be intelligent. That call for a cinema is a kind of important suggestion. And of course, we can see that that change is happening. It's a slow change, but of course it is happening. And the what they call the requirement of mainstreaming the social identities and including Ambedkar's name is again happening. For that matter, there is already 2 web series running on Ambedkar's life, on Ambedkar's biography. There are cultural shows that we can see on television now and then. So there is a possibility, not possibility, there it is happening in a bigger way, and that mainstreaming of a social and cultural issues, like for that matter, Kantara can be seen as an Adivasi film. Is such a super hit film in Kannada language. The story revolves around Adivasi village. So that those stories are now coming up. As Girish suggested, that the protagonist or the Dalit character is not again a victim character or a powerless character today. She's like Gili Puchi's character. She is rational, she is smart, and have the capacity to tilt the power. That possibilities are now there with the characters, and this imagination that Dalit character can play a normal human character today. That possibility, that imagination is required. That he will not be just playing a regular stereotypical character of being poor or marginalized, but as a human being, as a leader, and even the possibility to appear as a superhero. Why? Because probably Hollywood already shown that way, that blacks are superheroes. Black Panther films.
Yeah, Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman, he is superhero. And
So-
Will Smith did superhero.
Yes, did superhero. So that possibility was there, which is already been applied in Hollywood cinema. We are little late, but we can understand and imagine like that, the way Hollywood has
But do you know
imagined.
what I always imagined? What we used to talk about always? I always thought that Amitabh Bachchan in Diwar is a Dalit character. Because he sits outside, he doesn't go to temple. He said, he always says कि मुझे भगवान से कोई मुझे चीज़ चाहिए नहीं है, मैं बाहर ही ठीक हूँ, मैं आज ये फेंके हुए पैसे नहीं उठाता. तो that character of Amitabh Bachchan in Diwar, I related to him. Then in even Trishul. So that kind of Amitabh Bachchan's anger, which has a parallel Om Puri or Nasiruddin Shah doing the same thing in Ardhasatya or Par or Ankur or Manthan or Party. I want that thin line which has been between Amitabh Bachchan and Om Puri has to be diminished.
Right.
It has to be one. It has to become mainstream. I want Nawazuddin Siddiqui as a Dalit character. I want Manoj Bajpayee as a Dalit character who says, आज भी मैं फेंके हुए पैसे नहीं उठाता.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That imagination for the new directors is required. The films are now made. They are sensitive and conscious about this caste and Dalit categories and even the marginalization, but something more than that. the imagination which can break the ceiling and suggest that a Dalit character can emerge as a hero, as a normal hero, as a regular hero, which can lead and can become an icon. That possibility is required in the current times, and there is very much bigger possibility of that happening in a very recent times. And of course, Girish being around, that possibility we have more hopes that that possibility will be actualized very soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we are there. We Wankhede brothers will always feel that there is a lot scope of work which has to be done. अगर तुम्हारे पास बंगला है, गाड़ी है, माँ भी है, तो हमारे पास बाबा है. And that is enough for us. So हमारे पास और किसी चीज़ की ज़रूरत नहीं है. We know what we have, what we talk about, what we mean for, and we are there with our own sensibilities, with all our knowledge, with all our strength. We are there as Wankhede brothers, and we are going to make films. We don't only reviews. We are going to make films. We are going to talk about it, and we love to talk about films because we understand films. We are cinema literate. So when we say cinema literate, we write about films and we are confident about the way we see the films, and it is wonderful thing to say. We need to sit like this and analyze our own films. We need to keep pondering on what sort of cinema is happening now. We need to praise them. We need to know that there is not only Nagaraj Manjuli, there are Chadwick Bosemans, there are Spike Lees around there working for us. They are inspirations. There are Bong Joon-ho's working around the globe. There are Vetri Marans working around for our identity, for our culture, for our recognition. So we need to know them. They have reached to us with their creativity. We need to reach them by our acceptability and applause. So I think this is a wonderful discussion. I have a great strength in Harish because he writes beautifully, he speaks well, and we had always been lovers of great cinema, and I'm very happy that everybody is here. So now is the time for everybody, anybody who wants to ask questions. This is the question time.
थैंक यू वेरी मच हरीश जी एंड गिरीश जी. शुरुआत में ही मुझे ऐसा लगा था कि आज का ये जो मैंने बोल रहा था कि इट विल बी अ हिस्टोरिक मूवमेंट, और वैसे ही साबित हुआ. आई थिंक इट विल बी अ हिस्टोरिक रिकॉर्ड वट एवर यू आर टॉकिंग. बहुत सारे नाम तो हमें याद भी नहीं है. जिस हिसाब से मैंने बोला था कि ही इज़ ए इंसाइक्लोपीडिया ऑफ एंटरटेनमेंट इंडस्ट्री. So I would be very happy if you will ask some questions about it. Like Girishji, one question I have in my mind while you were talking about Manoj Vajpayee, and I think he has already played that role in Ek Banda Kafi Hai, because if you can see the surname of him, he's a advocate Solanki. So I think there is an indirect message by the producer of that film that the Solanki Ek Banda Kafi Hai. आसाराम जैसे पापी को अंदर डालने के लिए. So it's a very great movie. So that question I was having in mind. आपके मन में भी कुछ questions है तो पूछ लीजिए. You can, हाँ.
You can add to the discussion or kuch. I think Dinamani wants to say something. Dinamani, you want to mic? When this mic? Will this mic go there? Please.
It's so nice to listen to Harish Bhai and Girish Bhai. And we are very fortunate that we got so many information, ideas and insights into the issues, that is the politics of caste in Indian cinema. So I want to just ask a question. Harish Bhai, how we can relate the development of Dalit literature and the movements going around India particularly to the changes happening in Indian cinema. so far caste is concerned?
Thank you, Dinamani sir. Of course, like for that matter, post 80s, since the arrival of what they call the Bahujan Samaj parties in Uttar Pradesh, there is a kind of a change across literature and in cultural studies. Uh, Cinema being part of the cultural studies or cultural phenomena, understand that particular thing, that there is an influence outside and that reflects upon our literature often. So literature is of course an old medium to reflect upon sensibilities, and Marathi or Hindi literature or Hindi Dalit literature or Hindi literature on caste is kind of an old phenomena. But it has not contributed much to define the other medium of culture, mainly the mainstream cinema. It was there, it was mainly what they call a passive medium, which was restricted to certain intellectual class. But when it comes to it, to have an impact of literature, or even for that matter, a political class or political arrival, BSP had such a fantastic arrival in UP. It formed a government in that particular state, but you will not find any impact on the cultural milieu, mainly cinema. Similar, literature was there. The literature was fantastic. There were great writers. But when it comes to its impact, that it can influence or inspire a filmmaker or a film story or an actor, will not find that much of inspiration. And therefore, probably it is in the recent times that some reflections we can borrow from literature. But for a very, very long time, that distancing, that gap between literature and politics, between literature and mainstream cinema is very much evident. It's just kind of a bad luck for the filmmakers that they have not read that kind of a literature, which is such a wonderful and classic literature. So it is unfortunate that we have not read, or the filmmakers or those who are making films are not seeing that literature as an inspiring text. That is very unfortunate.
I will add on this. Like we had Vijay Tendulkar's Ardha Satya, Mahesh Kunchwar's Mon Rag, Party, Samna, and Samna was Arun Sadhu. Sihasan, and Samna was, I think, Mahesh Kunchwar, and Sihasan was Arun Sadhu. So we had Arun Sadhu, Vijay Tendulkar, Mahesh Kunchwar, who were instrumental in doing great script writing. They were script writers as well. They were literary giants as well. And they were doing great, and their films were also great. Because I remember most of the national award to Govind Nihalani and Shyam Benegal were because of the literature of Vijay Tendulkar. So obviously they were, but right now in last 15 to 20 years, we have not seen that kind of cinema which has emerged from the book. Like we have been making Uchleya for last 15 years, which is Lakshman Mane's great novel. But we have not able to made it. We have been making the Battle of Bhima Koregaon for last 7 years. So we talk about those literature, and there are so many literature points. There are so many literary work which has been done, which could be transformed into a great cinema. But it is yet to be done. And yes, there will be possibilities in near future where great cinema will come from the great book. Because it rarely happens, by the way. Godfather is an exception. Otherwise, you can never judge a film by the book. That is what they call. Yeah. Any more question?
Adding to your talk on this caste in Indian cinema, what I would like to say is that when talking about books, the To Kill a Mockingbird was one of 62 was one such great movie from a book which has transformed the entire black you can say the black struggle and has given it a solid impact. We never had any such book giving us an impact of getting the people on the streets or anything. The entire movement which came on in the later 10 years. So it was Martin Luther King and everybody had come up, and that again gave a boost to the black cinema. But we never had such kind of
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. For that matter, for so many films, or for that on Premchand's novel, there are films. Godan was made. Sadgati was made. So it is not that that connectivity is not there, but probably what Dinamani had in his mind was, of course, the Dalit literature, such a powerful literature, such a kind of revolutionary literature. And if you read any of the book, which is, of course, can change your mind, can bleed your heart. So that literature is avoided for a very, very long time. And our other literary figures were, of course, there. Vijay Tendulkar is, of course, a great name. And therefore, that distancing need to now, we have to kind of break that distancing. Bringing a great literature, making a good film on that, and presenting it to the audience.
Yeah. Yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird is a classic example. We could not produce something that way, but yes, we are known for making poor rehashes of such films. You have made 2 Hindi films out of it, by the way, and both were equally bad. So I won't name it. Yeah. Any more questions?
Yeah,
Shirish
Shirish ji.
wants to ask.
Indian industry, film industry, is supposed to be one of the oldest industry. So I'd like to ask one question: that why do you think all these years why there wasn't a representation of backward or Dalit representation all these years? And if you remember, Girish, for you had come for our Visual Leader magazines. You were the chief guest in one of the this thing. That time, that was around 12, 13 years back. You had touched this topic for the first time, and since then we saw some changes. Like that time, that south wave was not there, but after that, that south wave had some this thing. But North India, still there, you don't find much. So why do you think that all these years there was no representation or no this thing about Dalit representation? But this South Indian, why they were able to do that, and why the North are not doing, or do they don't want to do it at all? Or what do you think about the basically the current political situation? Is it hampering that, or do you think there will be a changes in near future? And if there is, and what will be the solution, and how can we overcome out of this? Thank you.
Harish should take this.
Now, of course, as I said that it is not that our cinema was always like that. For that matter, as I said, that golden age of Hindi cinema when the socialist filmmakers were making films like Jagte Raho or Avara or She 420, or even for that matter, Bimal Roy. There are big examples which are connected to the society, which understand the pulse of the social reality and try to make films. But the caste question was absent throughout. 1 or 2 incidents are there during that part of time, but otherwise completely wiped out. The reason often means those who do cinema studies, those who are reading on that, the suggestion is that, of course, caste was not seen as a category that can inspire people. That was the initial years of post-independence period. It was thought that probably tomorrow or in the larger development of this nation, caste will be wiped out. And there is no requirement to endorse or engage with the caste question. And for that matter, the India emerging as a secular or socialist country, that possibility was there in most of the minds, including the left intellectuals or filmmakers, those who were making films at that part of time. So that concern, that hope that caste will not be an important category of human civilization, or it has no much impact on everyday surfaces, that concern was there in most of the filmmakers, and mainly people coming from Punjab, mainly the whole Punjabi filmmakers, or even for that matter the Muslim filmmakers, had that kind of a distancing from these social issues. And therefore most of the films, though they talk about poverty, though they talk about migration, but hardly touch the caste question. Why? Because there was a reflection that this is an identity which need to be underground. That's why I said that it happens mostly post 80s, where there is an emergence of Dalit movement across India. There is an arrival of what they call a Dalit consciousness, a political party, a new literature, and new leadership, an intellectual class, and also a middle class. Everything is happening post 80s, post 90s. And that group, that new awakeness, that new consciousness which was there across society creates that kind of ripples which is now acknowledged by the filmmakers. And that's why the films started pouring up with this discussion. So you also need to know the historical context of that time. That context was basically about this making India secular, socialist, and independent out of any what they call as scriptive identities of the social life. That concern was there, and therefore some kind of rejection, some kind of hesitation vis-a-vis the caste issue, which of course post 80s has changed dramatically.
Yeah, and I will add on this that even when people were working there in the film industry, like when you say about the marginalized or the Bahujan guys or the Dalit people who are working in films that time, they were not open. They were not open to the ideas. I met a person 3 years back in a party, and he said that I have written this song, and it was a popular song. And he gave me the name. So I said, oh, your work is good. And then after I was leaving from the party, he came to me and he says, Girishji, actually I am a Bahujan man who is doing this film, who is doing all these films, but I don't want to expose myself. But I would love to come and meet you, and we would love to work together. So I said him that the day you will think that you don't need to hide your identity, come to me that day. Don't come before me. I don't want those people working there in film industry hiding their identity. Dr. Ambedkar has not made us this lame enough to hide our identity. If he was like a tiger or a lion, then you need to be like him. You need to be an aggressive. You need to be strong like him. You can't be that way, because I was there again in an IIT for a lecture, and I saw a very, very small assembly of students. And then somebody told me that most of the students don't want to come out because they don't want to label themselves as from the marginalized caste. So I spoke there and said that those who are afraid to come here, we are not going to help them. Remember, if you need help, if you need support, if you need voice, if you need strength, you need to come out in open and say that you belong to this community. Say Jai Bhim. If you say Jai Bhim, we are with you. But if you want to score big, if you make plenty of waters, plenty of money, do a lot of work, good work, but if you are hiding your identity, you don't matter to us. You matter to us only when you are strong enough to come out and tell everybody that this is the philosophy, this is the movement I believe in.
And why do you think that the changes that taken place in the South?
As I said, that South had a different orientation altogether.
Is it because of the
I'm coming to that.
conditioning
Right.
of the people or the audience? Are they different or the makers?
Like for that matter, if you see the Tamil movement for that matter, it was of course the anti-Brahminical struggle, anti-caste struggles there, and the social reformist movement are extremely strong. And the absence of what they call the middle caste in making most of the films. So you'll find that the film orientation from the beginning, the way here Achyut Kanya was made, you'll find that the social consciousness of Tamil cinema was extremely powerful from the day one. And that orientation developed consistently in Tamil cinema. Even in Telugu cinema, you can see that. So the idea of social reformism, the idea that there is some essence of anti-Brahminical struggle or anti-caste struggle, that possibility was there in Tamil and even in South Indian cinema, that reflected in that cinema. Hindi cinema, because it it nurtured in a very distinct manner. It was a post-partition cinema in India. And that post-partition cinema, the kind of people came from Pakistan to make Indian cinema, Hindi cinema here, that sensitivities were distinct. Their concerns were very, very different. And with that concern and that distinction, they made cinema, which is basically what they call a secular cinema. The social consciousness, the concern for social consciousness was therefore little absent in that cinema. It is not a bad cinema at all, it's a great cinema.
And who are they? They were Chetan Anand, they were Devanand, they were Sohrab Modi, they were Cafe Azmi. They were all leftist, leaning on the idea, Sahil Udyanvi. So they were all talking about ये महलों ये तख्तों ये ताजों की दुनिया जिन्हें नाज है अपने हिंद पे कहाँ है. So they were anti-establishment, they were communist, and they were even during 50s, early 50s, when Footpath was made, Shame Gam Ki Kasam, Khayyam Sahab. So these are all things which happened in late 50s, early 50s and 60s. They had all left leanings. Even Kabuli Wala or Fir Subah Hogi, these are all leftist films. So by that time that leftist was happening there, we were struggling as the first generation literate people. Our parents were finding the jobs. So while they were making Kabuli Wala, when Raj Kapoor made Prem Rog, our fathers was earning enough to give us an English medium education. So by the time he made Ram Teri Ganga Maili, we were in 10th or 12th standard understanding cinema. So obviously we will take some more time. And that is fair enough. Whenever जहाँ पर सवेरा हो वही जहाँ पर जाग गए वही सवेरा है. So now that we understand it, it's okay. So not more bridges are still broken. There are still lot of work to be done. So it happens. कभी कभी कुछ वक्त के लिए we take some time. But what happens is it's happened for betterment. Now we have FTI people working like Milind Uke, who has engineering graduate, who does a course from FTI and then does 9 years with Sanjay Leela Bhansali and then do 18 films. So we have this type of first generation filmmakers who understand this cinema as well as the cinema which was in 70s. So that understanding, that profoundness and that depth is bigger, I think, and it happens, but whatever happens for good. Any more questions?
Conclude, na? काही प्रश्न वाक साहेब, सोदने साहब, किशोर जी, आपका इंटरनेशनल इतना एक्सपीरियंस है. गिरीश जी ने सजेस्ट किया कि एक सेशन नेक्स्ट आपका ही होगा.
गिरीश, तुम्ही ज्या पद्धतीने सगळं सांगितलं सिनेमाविषयी, वी आर लेमॅन ॲक्च्युअल, पण द पर्सन द इन्स्पायर्ड अस टू सी द मूवीज अगेन. आय वॉज नॉट नोईंग अबाउट OTT ऑन एनिथिंग, बट स्टील आय फील लाईक दॅट. आय गो थ्रू दॅट industry, old movies I used to see that, but totally it is a different now. So really I thank you for the way you spoke to us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you sir.
Girish and Harish, you both are awesome. And we are really very, very, very proud of you. And I know the next generation or from you will take to a new heights. And that is for sure. And I always say to them, thank you. Thank you very much for this wonderful program.
थैंक यू वेरी मच. मैंने पहले ही कहा था कि आज कुछ ऐसा होने वाला है कि जो हमेशा याद किया जाएगा. और ये सेशन यहाँ पे तो हो ही रहा है, बट आज मुझे बैठ के वहाँ पे ऐसा लग रहा था कि वाई वी शुड नॉट टेक इट टू द वेरी बिगर लेवल. क्योंकि जिस हिसाब का कंटेंट, जिस हिसाब के नाम, लाइक ऑल ग्लोब, पूरा बॉलीवुड से लेके हॉलीवुड तक आपने जो नाम गिनाए हैं, और ऐसा एक भी टॉपिक आप लोगों ने छोड़ा नहीं है जिसके ऊपर बात नहीं हुई. इतना इनलाइटिंग है. सो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि एक बड़े ऑडिटोरियम में इसका एक शो होना चाहिए, और वहाँ पे बहुत सारे निमंत्रित लोग रहेंगे जो इतने इंडस्ट्रीज़ के, जैसे भी गिरीश जी ने मुझे अभी लास्ट वीक में ही बोला था कि आप कुछ एक लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल भी ले रहे हैं, बहुत बड़ा लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल, शायद राजस्थान में वो लेने का सोच रहे हैं. तो ऐसे ही एक सभी लोगों का अगर हमने एक गेट टुगेदर अरेंज किया, जो लोग मूवमेंट पे काम कर रहे हैं, जो लोग मार्जिनलाइज, जैसे उन्होंने मिलिंद जी का नाम लिया, इंडस्ट्री में इतने सारे लोग हैं जो बहुजन समाज से है, जो हमेशा गरीबों की बात करते हैं, महिलाओं की बात करते हैं, दलितों की बात करते हैं, बाबा साहब की बात करते हैं। मुझे लगता है यही एक जब भी मैं गिरीश जी को देखता हूँ तो एक इंस्पिरेशन अपने आप में आ जाता है कि जिस ताकत से वो जय भीम बोलते हैं और जिस ताकत से इवन उन्होंने जय भीम ऐप का लॉन्च किया था और जिस ताकत से उन्होंने वो जय भीम ऐप को एक इतने बड़े ऊंचे लेवल पे लेके गए थे कि यहाँ से पूरे मुझे लगता है कि अच्छे अच्छे स्टॉलवर्ट हिल गए थे और वो जय भीम ऐप के पीछे लग गए और वो ऐप कैसा बंद हो इसके लिए लगातार कोशिश कर रहे हैं। बट ये गिरीश जी की एक सोच है, जो वो सोचते हैं वो कभी कभी हमें लगता है कि क्या ये सही है। जैसे उन्होंने एक बार बोला था कि जय भीम ऐप को मैं ऐसा रिप्रेजेंट करना चाहता हूँ कि एक पूरा प्लेन जो है या पूरी ट्रेन है वो मैं रैपअप करना चाहता हूँ जय भीम नाम से। तो हमें तो ये यकीन नहीं लग रहा था, बट उन्होंने ऑलमोस्ट वी वर देयर। बट कहने की बात यह है कि जब वो बात करते हैं तो हम जैसे बहुत सारे जो लोग हैं समाज में, बाबा साहब हमेशा कहते थे कि मुझे खाली 5 लोग दे दो अच्छे, मुझे 5 लोगों की ज़रूरत है। मुझे लगता है 5 लाख लोगों से भी ज़्यादा लोग अभी तैयार हो चुके हैं। बट खाली जिस हिसाब से गिरीश जी बोलते कि कॉन्फिडेंट के साथ तुम्हें रहना है, अगर आपको हेल्प चाहिए, अगर उस कम्युनिटी से आप हैं और बाबा साहब की वजह से आप वहाँ पे गए हैं, तो आपको खुले मैदान में आने से कोई प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं है, कुछ हिचकिचाहट ही नहीं चाहिए। जैसे अभी शिरीष जी ने बोला था कि दक्षिण में इतना लोग अच्छे कर रहे हैं, पेरियार स्वामी जी का इतना लीगेसी, शायद पेरियार स्वामी जी की बात हमने कही नहीं, बट जो पॉलिटिकल इन्फ्लुएंस पेरियार जी ने वहाँ पे बोया है उसका भी एक रीज़न है। महाराष्ट्र में इतने बड़े 3 लोग की हम बात करते हैं, डॉक्टर बाबा साहब अम्बेडकर, महात्मा ज्योतिबा फुले और शाहू महाराज, जिनकी पूरी दुनिया में नवाजा जाता है। इतने 3 बड़े लोग हमारे महाराष्ट्र की भूमि से हैं, बट अनफॉर्चुनेटली उसको पॉलिटिकल पावर में हम कन्वर्ट कर नहीं पाए आज जिस हिसाब से हमारे शक्ल हुई है। तो हो सकता है आने वाले दिनों में जब हमारे हाथ में सत्ता आएगी, गिरीश जी ने भी कहा है कि खुल के आओ, सामने आओ, हम लोग अगर साथ में आएंगे तो जरूर कुछ करेंगे। मैं दोनों को बहुत बहुत साधुवाद देता हूँ, धन्यवाद देता हूँ, आप यहाँ पे आए और आज का ये शो आपने बहुत ऊंचे लेवल पे लेके गए। हर हफ्ते हम यहीं पे मिलते रहेंगे और हर हफ्ते अलग अलग टॉपिक पे मिलते रहेंगे। धन्यवाद, थैंक यू।